The first
Vitals
time
are
I set
stabilizing.
foot on
She needs
Lasara,
rest.
7,
Will she recover fully?
I felt like I
Yes,
had
she
entered
is
a
strong.
dream I wasn't sure I
How
wanted
is
to
she?
wake from.
Her
The
vitals are
planet hung
stabilizing.
in the
She should wake
void like a
soon.
jewel,
What happened?
its lavender skies stretching over rolling plains of silver grass. The air shimmered with a strange luminescence, as though the molecules themselves were alive. I had been sent here as an envoy, representing Earth's fledgling interstellar council, but I never anticipated being thrust into something so personal, so intimate, it would alter the course of my life forever. I had been briefed in vague terms. Queen Seraphine ruled over the Lasari, a species of ethereal beings who looked almost human but for the translucent sheen of their skin and the subtle bioluminescent patterns that shifted across their bodies with emotion. Their most precious treasure, or so the reports claimed, was her daughter, Princess Awakens. For months, a mysterious illness had sapped the princess's strength, leaving her frail and pale, confined to a chamber of luminescent flora that the Lasari called the Healing Grove. I had no special title or credentials. I wasn't a royal healer or a specialist in alien biology. I was, simply, a physician trained on Earth, but desperate enough to take on a challenge that no one else dared approach. Something about the Queen's plea struck me at the core of my being. There was urgency, yes, but also a note of vulnerability. And I had always believed that healing wasn't just about the body, it was about trust, courage, and presence. My first encounter with the princess was unforgettable. The chamber was softly lit by the glowing flora, each plant pulsating gently like a heartbeat. Princess Awakens lay in a crystalline bed, her hair floating around her like a dark halo. She looked up at me with eyes that seemed older than the years she had lived, eyes that had already seen suffering far beyond her time. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her voice trembled, though it carried a melodic cadence that seemed to resonate with the room itself. "Call me Kale," I said, kneeling beside her. "I've come to help you." She studied me carefully, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin flickering a faint violet, an expression of caution, maybe fear. "Help or experiment?" she asked softly. I held her gaze. "I don't experiment. I heal. And I care." There was a pause, long enough for me to feel the weight of her life suspended between us. Finally, she exhaled slowly, and the violet flicker softened into a steady blue, a color she reserved for curiosity and acceptance. The days that followed were grueling. Her illness was unlike anything I had seen. It wasn't a simple viral infection, nor a biochemical imbalance. Her cells were in a state of near stasis, almost as if the life force within her had been partially severed from the energy of her body. Standard treatments, medications, energy modulation, even the Lasari's traditional herbal therapies had failed. I spent hours observing, scanning, and theorizing. I learned to communicate with her through subtle gestures, the movement of my hands creating vibrations she could sense. Gradually, she began to trust me, allowing me to monitor her vital energy. She was quiet, cautious, but there were moments of laughter, a soft, musical sound that filled the sterile chamber with warmth. And then came the breakthrough. While experimenting with a combination of human regenerative serums and Lasari bioluminescent compounds, I noticed something extraordinary. Her cells responded to emotional resonance. When I held her hand and spoke words of reassurance, her cellular activity surged. It wasn't just medicine, it was connection, empathy, presence. I realized that the illness wasn't entirely physical. It was tied to her spirit, her fear, her isolation. She had been born into privilege, but it came with loneliness. The royal court had kept her confined, worried that her illness would worsen under public scrutiny. I had entered her life not as a healer alone, but as the first person to truly see her, to truly connect with her. It took weeks. I slept little, ate less, and watched over her night and day. I became attuned to her subtle cues, the twitch of an eyelid, the faintest shift in the patterns across her skin. I learned when to speak, when to remain silent, when to place my hand upon her arm and simply let her breathe. The day she first sat up on her own, the room seemed to exhale with relief. Her skin glowed with vibrant colors, swirling greens and golds that spoke of renewal and vitality. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You saved me," she said, almost reverently. I shook my head. "You saved yourself. I just helped guide it." Her laughter broke the fragile tension, a sound so beautiful it made my chest ache. It was in that moment I realized my heart no longer belonged solely to myself. I had fallen irrevocably for her. But in the Lasari court, emotion alone was not enough. Their customs were ancient and deliberate. The queen would not allow attachment lightly, particularly between a human and her daughter. And yet, when I presented my findings and documented her recovery, the queen summoned me to her private chambers. Queen Seraphine was radiant and formidable, her bioluminescence pulsing in slow, deliberate waves of indigo and silver. She studied me carefully, as though weighing my worth against centuries of tradition. "You have healed my daughter," she said, her voice carrying authority tempered with gratitude. "I have seen many humans, but few have such presence. Illyra's survival rests with you now. Tell me, Kale, what is it you seek?" I swallowed hard. Only to see her well. Only to continue being near her, if she will allow it. The queen's gaze softened. "Then you shall remain near her. But know this, among the Lasari, bonds of healing carry weight beyond companionship. Healing is sacred, and those who heal are considered potential mates, not in arrogance, but in recognition of the connection formed. Should Illyra choose, she may select you as her mate, but the choice must come from her." I nodded, unsure if my heart could survive the waiting. The following weeks were a delicate dance. Princess Illyra tested me in subtle ways, probing the depths of my patience, my empathy, my courage. We shared moments of quiet conversation beneath the lavender sky, where she would confide fears she had never spoken aloud, the dread of never leaving her chamber, the loneliness of being a royal in a world that expected perfection. I listened, always, offering not solutions but presence. Then came the day that would change everything. She invited me to walk with her through the bioluminescent forest, a sacred grove where only the royals and their chosen companions were allowed. As we wandered beneath the softly glowing flora, she stopped and turned to me, her expression serious. "Kale," she said, her hand brushing mine, "you healed me when no one else could. But more than that, you saw me. You didn't treat me as fragile or powerless. You treated me as alive. And that is something I have never felt before." My heart pounded in my chest. "Illyra, She silenced me with a soft smile. "I am choosing, Kale. You have been near me in my darkest hours. You have walked beside me when I had nowhere else to go. I choose you as my mate." Time seemed to collapse around us. The forest's light intensified, bathing us in a warm, golden glow. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted in waves of deep violet and gold, a sign of profound emotion. The connection between us solidified, a bond neither of us could deny. When we returned to the palace, the queen was waiting. She regarded us with a serene, approving expression. "You have chosen wisely," she said. "The bond of healer and healed is now complete. May it bring you both strength, and may it honor the legacy of our people." Illyra turned to me, her hand slipping into mine. "Together," she whispered, "always together." And so it began, the life I had never imagined, now unfolding before me. The Lasari court, initially wary of a human in their midst, gradually accepted me as part of their world. I learned their language, their traditions, their ways of honoring life and connection. I became not just a healer, but a companion, a partner, and ultimately, a mate of the princess who had once seemed so fragile, yet now stood beside me with a strength that illuminated every shadow. We traveled through the plains of silvergrass and the lavender skies, visiting villages where our bond inspired hope. The people saw that healing was not merely a matter of skill or magic, but of connection and love. And in private moments, away from the court and its expectations, Ilera and I laughed, dreamed, and planned a life together that was entirely our own. Years passed, and the memory of her illness became a distant shadow. She grew stronger, wiser, and even more radiant with each passing day. I, too, changed, learning to see the world not only as a healer but as a partner, a protector, and a companion bound by choice and trust. One evening, as we watched the twin moons rise above the plains, Ilera leaned her head against my shoulder. Her patterns shimmered softly in waves of green and gold, and I realized that the greatest healing of all had been mutual. She had restored my heart as much as I had restored her body. "I never imagined this life," she murmured. "I thought I would be defined by sickness and solitude. But you changed everything." I kissed her forehead gently. We changed everything together. And in that moment, beneath the lavender skies of Lasara 7, I knew it was true. The bond of healer and healed had become the bond of hearts, unbreakable and eternal. And for the first time in my life, I felt wholly, beautifully, irrevocably home. Years passed, and the memory of her illness became a distant shadow. Princess Ilera grew stronger and wiser with each passing day, her bioluminescent patterns shining more brilliantly than ever. I, too, changed, no longer just a healer, but a partner, a companion, and a mate bound by choice and trust. One evening, beneath the twin moons rising over the lavender plains, Ilera leaned her head against my shoulder. Her glowing patterns shimmered in waves of gold and green. "I never imagined this life," she whispered. "I thought I would be defined by sickness and solitude. But you changed everything." I held her hand gently. "We changed everything together." She smiled, the light in her eyes reflecting in mine. The bond between us, the bond of healer and healed, of hearts intertwined, was unbreakable, eternal. In that moment, I realized that the greatest gift of all was not simply saving her life, but being chosen by her, to walk beside her, to share a future that neither of us could have imagined alone. As the lavender wind swept across Lasara 7, carrying with it the scent of silvergrass and glowing flowers, I knew we were home. Together, always.